If you're a beginner sewist in the US and you want some inexpensive, easy patterns, we'll start here. Hi, my name is Sarah, and welcome to my channel, which is all about sewing and styling a handmade wardrobe. Since we're in January, I'm sure there were a lot of people who received a sewing machine for Christmas and are just getting started on their sewing journey. So I thought I would make a video about patterns that I think are good for beginners. Now, these are all patterns that I've sewn for myself, so I can personally vouch for them. And in this video, I'm only going to talk about Big Four patterns. Now, I am fully aware that this is very US centric, but I can only talk about my own lived experience. But when I was a new sewist, I really liked Big Four patterns because you could go to the store and get them on sale for $1.99, and then I'm not investing a lot of money in a pattern in case it doesn't work out for me, or just in case the whole hobby doesn't work out for me. I haven't spent a ton of money on patterns. Now, I know that people in other parts of the world do not have access to these really deep discounted sales, and so I will be doing a second video about indie patterns that I recommend for beginners. For now, we're just going to focus on the Big Four. The other thing to note about these patterns is that many of them are not size inclusive. In recent years, the Big Four has gotten better about expanding their size range, but unfortunately, a lot of these patterns that I'm going to talk about are not super size inclusive. But the scope of this video is limited to patterns that I have actually sewn. So I just want to make clear that if you're a new sewist and you're looking for a bigger size range, don't discount the Big Four and say that they don't have anything for me. Do check out the Big Four because I do think that they are getting better about making patterns for everybody. I'm going to be putting in pictures of the pattern covers, and if I have it, I will also insert a picture of the garment that I have made. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about each individual garment, but if you have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment and I'm happy to answer you. Let's start with tops. The first top I'm going to talk about is a men's raglan t-shirt. It's actually unisex. You could make it for a woman as well, but it is modeled on a male. The pattern number is Simplicity 8613. Now, the view that I have sewn is the easiest one, and so if I were a beginner, I would start with that one. And that is the version that has the crew neck option. There's also a V-neck and a Henley style. It comes with both short and long sleeves. I think that starting out your sewing journey with a simple t-shirt pattern is a really good way to go. And the nice thing about this particular design is that once you have sewn the basic pattern, you can go ahead and grow your skill set and try out the V-neck or the Henley, and you get 3 different looking styles in one envelope. So I think that makes it a really good value. I've only sewn this t-shirt once. I made it for my husband, and unfortunately I don't have a picture of it because I'm not sure he has it anymore. But I do think that it's a really good pattern, and like I said, you could make it for a woman as well. There's no reason why you couldn't. The second top on my list is New Look 6707. Now this is really more for advanced beginners once you've sewn a few items, but I do think that this would make a good first shirt pattern or blouse pattern if you've never sewn anything with a collar or button placket before. There are definitely different options that make this easier or more difficult. You can do the view that doesn't have the collar, and that would be simpler. But even if you wanted to put the collar on, there's no collar stand, so it's pretty easy to insert. And you could even leave the ruffle off of the collar if you wanted to make it a little bit simpler. The sleeves are finished with elastic, and so you don't have to put in a cuff. And I'm pretty sure there's a fold-over placket. There's no separate placket to sew on. So I do think this is a pretty easy top to sew, and it definitely has a distinct look to it, so the style may not be for everybody. But if you do like this style, I do think that it's a nice blouse or shirt if you're starting out as a beginner. Moving on to dresses. My first recommendation is from McCall's 8058, which is a t-shirt dress that has a ton of different options. Now, there's a reason why I keep recommending t-shirts to beginners, and that's because I do think that a basic t-shirt is very easy to sew for someone who is new, and a t-shirt dress is basically just a longer t-shirt. So this pattern has a ton of different options. If you're brand new, I would recommend starting with one of the simpler ones that has a round neck as opposed to the V-neck. I believe the pattern doesn't even include a neckband, so you would simply fold over the neckline and stitch it down. Now, there are some disadvantages to doing that, but for a beginner, it's probably not a bad idea just to try out hemming the neckline before you try applying a neckband. I have made a short sleeve version and a short length with the crew neck, and it's a really nice pattern. It is a fairly form-fitting dress, and so if that's not your style, then maybe you want to skip this one. But it's a really good pattern for fabrics like cotton spandex jersey, which is nice and stable and easy to sew. The next dress pattern is McCall's 7831, which is an overalls dress that has a few different views. It's kind of your classic style overalls dress that has the buckles. It's a pull-on dress that has no closures. If you're uncomfortable with doing the hardware for the buckles, you could substitute something like buttons and buttonholes, or even ties probably. It has patch pockets, which are very easy to stitch on, and it's actually a learn to sew pattern, and so the instructions should be relatively simple for beginners. Admittedly, when I made my two versions of the dress, I'm not sure that I really consulted the instructions that much, but that does mean that it's probably really easy to sew. I made both of my versions out of a denim, and I think that that is a really excellent fabric to use for this particular make, but you could also use something like corduroy, or if you wanted to start with something like even a little bit lighter, maybe try something to the mid to heavyweight side of cotton. Do keep in mind that this dress is quite short. I'm only 4'9", and I found that the length on me was perfect. I didn't have to shorten it at all. So I think that on people who are more average height or taller, you should really double check the length before you cut it out because I think it is quite short. The next pattern is McCall's 8035, which is a faux wrap dress that has several different views. I've made two of these dresses and I found them really easy to construct. It has an elastic channel in the waist, which means that it's really easy to just pull over your head. You don't have to put in a zipper or anything. There's a couple different styles of sleeves, but the one that I think that is particularly easy is the longer sleeve that's finished with elastic gathering. I believe you also gather the top of the cap, so you don't have to worry too much about setting in the sleeve. And you also have the option to add tiers to the dress, or you could just do the view that has the long gathered skirt, then that one would probably be a little bit easier. Now, I do think that you should be mindful of sizing on this one. The first version that I made, I believe I chose the size that was equivalent to my measurements on the sizing chart, and I found that it came up too large. So the second time that I made it, I sized down one size, and that actually fit me a lot better. And I also think that fabric choice is really important with this dress because you don't want to pick anything that's too stiff or heavy. Other than that, I think that it's a really cute dress and it's easy to sew and it's very easy to wear. So I do recommend it if you are looking for a nice dress to wear as a beginner. And the last dress I have to recommend is a children's pattern. It's Simplicity 9120. I wanted to include a few easy patterns if you were looking to make garments for someone other than yourself. Now, I do not have children, and so I cannot testify to how well these fit, but I did make a few of these last year for the Sewing Challenge Project Dress a Girl, which was sewing dresses for charity, and the pattern was super simple to sew. It would be even easier if you did the view that has sleeves as opposed to one that is sleeveless. It is finished with facings and it has a keyhole neckline, but if you don't want to worry about putting on a button and a rouleau loop, you could easily substitute ties, which is actually what I did for mine. And it's a super simple, easy dress to construct. For fabrics, you can use something nice and stable like quilting cotton, which is what I used for mine. And it's a really cute dress for kids. It comes in a nice size range. And it's the kind of pattern that you could make over and over again in different fabrics. And as your skills grow, you could probably hack it and add even more interesting and unique details or embellishments to make it special and unique. I just have one jumpsuit pattern to share with you, and it is Simplicity 9125. I have made this jumpsuit one time. I made the view that has the tie neck version with the keyhole as opposed to the crossover version, so I can't really testify to that one if it's easy to make, but I definitely know the version that I made is super simple. It has elastic gathering in the waist, so there's no closures. You don't have to worry about putting in a zipper or buttons. And the pants on it are a relatively relaxed fit, so they're a little bit easier to fit to the body. They're not super close or tight fitting. I made mine in a really nice flowy fabric, and I think that it makes a really lovely jumpsuit. But if you're a beginner and you wanted something a little bit easier that's not as slippery, I would recommend something like a linen or a lightweight cotton. I think that that could work equally as well. So if you're looking for a jumpsuit pattern that's easy to sew, I do recommend that one. Now let's talk about pants. I only have one pants pattern recommendation for you, and that's because of a few reasons. I think that the easiest style of pant to start out with is a simple, full elastic waist pant. There's a gazillion different patterns for that kind of style on the market, but you really only need one. And the thing to remember as a beginner about pants is that they tend to be very easy to sew, but the difficult part is actually in the fitting. And so if you sew your first pair of pants and you try them on and they look awful on you, be aware that that's not at all uncommon. Maybe you're one of the lucky ones and you can wear a pair of pants right out of the envelope. And if that's you, congratulations, you've won the lottery. But for the rest of us, there's definitely some tricky things about fit. Certain patterns just don't fit our bodies in certain ways. And so you will learn over time how to make pants that fit you. So just don't get discouraged if when you make a pair of pants for the first time, if it's not absolutely perfect, it doesn't fit quite right. That's pretty normal and you'll get better as you go. So the pattern that I am recommending is Simplicity 8841. And again, it's pretty much just because I've made that pattern, but there's a ton of big four elastic waist pants patterns out there. This one is really nice because it has patch pockets, which I think are a little bit easier to apply. And it has a couple of different options. So you can do more of a tapered leg view or a wide leg view. And I think you have the option to add cuffs or not. I've only sewn this pattern one time and I accidentally made them too short, but that's neither here nor there. I was able to get a decent fit and they were certainly very easy to sew. They would be really good in any sort of light to medium weight fabric. I believe I made mine out of a linen rayon blend. And I do think that this style is one that you could make over and over again and try out the different leg shapes. You could get a lot of versatility out of just this one pattern. I have a couple of beginner skirt patterns to share with you. The first one is Butterick 6743. I have made this one time. This is a skirt that has a facing and a side zip. It does not have a waistband, so I think it's a little bit easier to do the facing than a waistband. It's a paneled skirt, and so it's really simple to sew the panels together. You don't have to worry about gathering or pleating or anything like that. And I will admit that the pattern cover doesn't look very inspiring, but it actually is a really nice basic skirt that you can make over and over again in different fabrics. The panels just give the skirt a nice swish. It's really lovely, and there's actually a couple of different views, one that's a little bit fuller and one that's a little bit slimmer, and you can also do different lengths. I think that this skirt could be put together fairly easily, but in a variety of different fabrics, you could get so many different effects. So this is a staple skirt that you could make over and over again. The next skirt is Simplicity 9267. This one is just a little bit more difficult than the first one that I talked about. It's a button front skirt. It does have a waistband and it has slash pockets. So I think it's another really good one to grow your skills if you're looking to expand them after having made something really simple. It also comes in a variety of different lengths, and you can make it in a ton of different fabrics, from really light rayon challis, which is what I use, on up to something pretty heavy like a denim or a corduroy. So you could make this skirt for all seasons. I think that it is super versatile. I've only sewn it the one time, and I really think it's simply because I don't wear a lot of skirts, but I do think it's a really nice pattern. It is very simple to construct, and although it does have a button placket, you don't actually have to sew on a ton of buttons and buttonholes, so that's kind of nice. You're not looking at putting on like 15 buttons or something. Now let's go over a few layers. This category was a little bit difficult because things like jackets and coats tend to be more difficult. However, I was able to find a few patterns that I would recommend. The first is Simplicity 9374. This is for a pullover or a button front vest. There's a cropped view, there's a tunic view, there's a longer view. It has a crossover V for the neckline, which is a little bit simpler than a mitered V, and it has facings for the armholes. I have made the cropped version of the vest 2 times and I found it very easy to sew. It's a cute little layering piece. It's pretty easy to wear over button-up shirts or t-shirts or turtlenecks. So I think if you're just getting into trying out layering pieces, this would be a good start. It's for stretch knits only. Leveling up a little bit, we have Simplicity 9239, which is a pattern for a shirt jacket. This is an unlined jacket and it has an unlined yoke, so you don't need to do the burrito method. The edges are finished with facings. The cuff is actually applied to the sleeve in one of the easiest methods that I have ever used, so that's one of the main reasons why I would recommend this shirt jacket pattern over some others that I've tried. It has patch pockets. It can be made in a variety of different fabrics. You could use a fabric that's a little bit lighter and have a more spring weight jacket, or you could use a denim like I did and have kind of an all seasons jacket. You could use corduroy. I really like this pattern and I feel like it's not appreciated enough in the sewing community. I think maybe the pattern cover is not very inspiring, but I do think it is an excellent first time shirt jacket pattern. And even if you've never made like an actual shirt before, I think this would be a really good place to start to get some experience with that kind of construction without some of the trickier parts that are involved. This jacket does have a collar and collar stand, but again, that's kind of the only sort of tricky part. So it would be a good first shirt for you to try because that's really the only hard part that you need to focus on. The next pattern is Vogue 1610. It is for a robe style jacket and there's a couple of different lengths. This pattern is super easy to sew. It's very boxy and so there's not a lot of difficult seams. It does have pockets. I opted not to put pockets on mine, but the pockets are actually just a single layer that you sew directly to the jacket, so they are very easy to apply. You can make a tie belt or you can leave it off. This is a really good pattern for a beginner because it's another one of those that you could choose a fabric to be the star of the show, and the actual sewing is really quite simple. And nobody would know how easy it is to sew. They're just going to see that beautiful fabric and think, wow, that looks amazing. I've only made one of these jackets and I'm not likely to make another one, not because I don't think that it's a good pattern, but just because this particular style I don't think really suits me that well. But if you're into that boho style, I think that it's a really nice piece that you can layer in the warmer months. And finally, in this category, we have Simplicity 8797, which is a lined coat pattern. I did a full review of this pattern, and so if you missed that, I'm going to put it up in the card so you can check it out. I do go into detail in that video why I recommend this coat as a first-time coat for a beginner. It's just a really simple sew that doesn't have a lot of detail, but it is lined. So you do learn a few things, but it's not as stressful as trying to do a full-on tailored coat. And you can use a variety of fabrics, but I really like the idea of using a faux fur or something with some texture just to make it a little bit more fun. Now, this last category is what I would consider to be the most valuable for a beginner, and that is the wardrobe pattern category. And the reason why I think it's so valuable is because you can pay a low price and you get several different types of garments within one envelope. So in some of them, theoretically, you could make a whole capsule wardrobe out of just one pattern. The first pattern that I like to recommend is Simplicity 9550. It's a Mimi G pattern for, I believe there is a crop top, a skirt, and a pair of shorts. I have only made the crop top, so that's all I can address. The neckline of the top is finished with a facing, and I know that a lot of people don't like facings, but in my opinion, they are easier for a beginner than bias tape, so that's why I think it's suitable for beginners. There's also a couple of different options. You can have a simple keyhole opening in the back, or you can do the tie like the version that I did. And then the hems and the sleeves are finished with elastics, so I think that method of finishing is really simple for a beginner. Now, when I made mine, in my opinion, the crop top is quite short, and so if I were to make it again, I would lengthen it a couple of inches just to make it more comfortable for me. But your mileage may vary depending on what styles you like. Either way, I do think it's really easy to construct. The next pattern is one for bottoms. It's Simplicity 9549. This is an elastic waist pattern for shorts, pants, and a skirt, and I have made the shorts. Now, this is another pattern that I think is good for leveling up your skills because it has those really interesting pockets. It has kind of like a stacked patch pocket detail. You can see on the envelope what it looks like. And it's just really fun to construct, and it adds a little bit of a design touch that's different than something standard. It's easy to sew, but it's not going to look super basic. I made the shorts and I actually had a little bit of a fitting issue, but that was totally my own fault. I think that there's nothing wrong with the pattern. It's really nice. They are fairly loose. They're going to be fairly simple to fit. And if you are nervous about fitting pants, you could always start with the skirt and go from there. The next wardrobe pattern is Simplicity 8558. It's another Mimi G pattern. It has a jacket, shorts or pants, and a little knit cami crop top. I've only made a hack of the shorts, but the fact that I'm actually saying that I made a hack of something means that it must be really easy to sew because I'm not really big on pattern hacking. So the shorts and or the culottes are super, super simple to sew. They're elastic waist. They're super wide. They're almost like palazzo style pants. So you really do not need to worry about the fitting. And they're also super comfortable. So I made mine out of a rayon fabric, but again, if you don't want to start with something that slippery, you could use something like a linen would be absolutely perfect, or even like a linen rayon blend, or you could use something more stable like a lightweight cotton chambray or something. I have looked at the instructions for the jacket, and I do think the jacket is fairly simple if you're looking for a first time jacket pattern. It is unlined. And the little crop top is also super simple. So I think overall, this is a good one for beginners if you're interested in making all of the pieces. The next one is another unisex pattern. It is Simplicity 9337. It's a wardrobe pattern for loungewear. So there's t-shirts, long sleeve and short sleeve. There's shorts and longer pants. So I've made the long sleeve t-shirt, which I believe is view a couple of times for my husband. And if you're really new to sewing, I would definitely start with the t-shirt that has the cuffs and the band. And the reason I would start with that is because there's no hemming. In my opinion, knits are actually quite easy to sew even on a regular sewing machine, but where it can get tricky is actually in the hemming because you don't want to accidentally stretch out your fabric when you're sewing it. So if you finish all of your edges with bands, you don't have to worry about that. I made this t-shirt a couple of times for my husband out of a merino jersey, and he absolutely loves them. So I think this pattern is a really good starting point if you're getting into sewing t-shirts. It has a very relaxed fit, so you don't have to worry about the fitting too much, and it is unisex, so you could make it for anybody, and it would be a great addition to anyone's closet for loungewear. My next recommendation is Simplicity 8982, which is for a knit dress, skirt, or top. I have made the dress and the skirt, and particularly I think that the skirt is really, really easy to sew. I highly recommend it for a beginner. The dress and the top are also easy, although gathering those sleeves into the long cuff can be a little bit tricky, but really not too bad. I love the way that they have styled the cover model with the matching top and skirt because it looks like a faux dress, but you could wear them as separates. It could be a really versatile addition to your wardrobe. And you can really make a nice variety of garments with this particular pattern, and it is super simple to sew. In case you missed my review of the Simplicity coat, I'm going to put it up here so you can check it out next. Thank you so much for watching.